Everyone wants the Cowboys to draft Sonny Styles at number 12. But what happens if they don't? We'll dive into that next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are answering your Twitter questions. And this one comes from Mr. Fard. Great name. He says, I love Sonny Styles. I want him at number 12. But the linebacker class is great. Would you prefer the Cowboys draft Styles at 12 and then fill in the cornerbacks, the edge room later on in the draft, or wait until later in the draft, take advantage of the linebacker depth, and grab a more important position in round one?
First of all, I think we should start this conversation talking about Styles, right? Like, I think, and I'll speak only for myself, and you tell me if you disagree, but I think Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese obviously falls into this category as well. I would say, I think that those two guys are several levels above any of the other linebackers in this class.
Yes.
And to the point where I don't think that Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese are the kinds of linebackers who come out of every single draft. Like, I think they're pretty I'm not going to say the generational because that's
but I was trying to think, like, the last linebacker that I had a similar grade on, I think like a pure off-ball linebacker, not a Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
I think was Roquan Smith back in 2018, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why, and I think the Arvell Reese thing really muddies these waters to a certain degree, right? Because he's got a lot of gravity around him, and there's a constant discussion about whether he's an off-ball linebacker or an edge rusher.
Take him out of the equation. Just do Sonny Styles as a pure linebacker process.
Well, what I'm getting at is that I think it's muddying the waters in just how special Sonny Styles is, right? And to me, I guess what I'm getting at is, I think if Sonny Styles was available, I think you should take him depending on what else is there. But I also think that the Cowboys may want to employ a different way of attacking this position. And I know that the questioner said, would you rather take Sonny Styles or wait? And to me, and you and I had a conversation before the show, I think the Cowboys should really seriously consider spending real money at the linebacker position and going and getting a legitimate linebacker, going and actually trying to get someone like Devin Lloyd or one of the top end free agent linebackers. Because, for one thing, you said it, you've got Overshown this year and you're excited to see him on a healthy year and an off season, but he's only got one more year left on his deal. So you need long-term solutions at linebacker, even if you draft a guy, right? So I think that there's value potentially in signing a guy in the free agent market. And I love the class. I'm not poo-pooing going and drafting a linebacker a little bit later in this class. I think there's tons of them, and you're going to have a lot of good success. But I think if we're trying to actually move the needle at the position, you want to improve the position. I kind of think that signing a Devin Lloyd or replace him with whoever you think is top end linebacker, not just a serviceable starter level linebacker, but a guy that you think could be more than that. I think that gives you as much bang for your buck in the free agent market as signing a corner or signing a defensive end where you're going to overspend and maybe get a more marginal player. And then that frees you up to use your 2 first-round picks on the 2 positions that usually warrant that kind of first-round pick, edge and corner, right? So it's not that I'm poo-pooing the idea of using linebacker later. I think it's a great class to do this. I'm certainly not opposed to doing that at all. I'm just throwing out there that, maybe another way to do this, considering all the other needs the Cowboys have and, the kind of trying to figure out how many slots of options they have of picks at this point and all the needs they need to fill. Maybe a better solution is to try to attack that position specifically in the free agent market, and then go get the guys you need in first corner and edge in the first round. And then, yes, honestly, still dip later on in the draft and get a linebacker because you need depth at the position.
48% of mock drafters on Pro Football Focus are pairing Styles to the Cowboys. And that is insane when you think that they're drafting at 12, right? To have somebody that's basically in 50% of the mocks matched up. This is clearly somebody that Cowboys Nation really wants. And again, I understand it because if you're grading him just on a prospect alone and not by value, it's hard to think he's not one of the top 5 players in this class conservatively. And I actually, there's a couple of people out there that have him as the number 1 overall prospect in this class. And I get it. At the same time, the draft isn't necessarily just about drafting the best players because there is this positional value. Absolutely. And you've got to weigh sequencing. And this is what we talk about all the time. You don't worry about sequencing too much like on rounds 5, 6, and 7. But I do think you can get a starting quality linebacker on day 2, like a Jacob Rodriguez or a Kyle Lewis or our guy Bryce Boucher from Oregon. Like a lot of these guys are going to be available. Spend your money in free agency on guys that are proven, that don't need time to, learn the position, and then use your premium draft capital on edges and corners, players that generally don't become available in free agency very often.
Yeah, because you could use those. Like if you do it the other way, if you solve one of these, I think what we're kind of laying out is you need to solve one of these positions by probably cobbling together a free agent and then a later round draft pick, or if you end up trading maybe a late day 2, right, or a pick that you pick up. But I think I think you can solve these 3 positions by assigning 2 of them first round picks. Sure. And then the other one you cobble together with a free agent, maybe in a later round pick in combination, right?
The other part of this is, and I get it, you can't just use free agent market to judge players. I get it. But Devin Lloyd might be the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL right now. And he's 27 years old. And he's likely going to hit the market. He was PFF's 3rd highest graded linebacker. Over the cap has him projected at $16 million a year. A defensive end like Kwity Paye, who you don't even feel great about being like a high-end starter, is projected to get more in free agency. And this is what we're talking about with value. Even an average defensive end has more value on the open market than Devin Lloyd. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's more valuable on the football field, but it's a lot easier to find quality linebackers in free agency on day 2, day 3 of the draft than it is a superstar defensive end.
Yeah, and Kwity Paye's he's going to get $20 million, and he's not a sure thing. He's been very up and down in his young career. Devin Lloyd, I think you get like a guy that is clearly ascending into being one of the best young linebackers in football. You kind of saw his kind of slow curve, but that happens with these guys. But I think what you've seen is a crescendo into solid play. I think Paye actually may have had a down year last year, so he's coming off of a not great year, and you're still paying him $4 million more a year for a guy who's probably the 6th or 7th best, free agent defensive end available, right? And with Lloyd, you're getting a guy who you're in Pro Bowl competition, at linebacker with paying less money. Yeah, and exactly. And now you are also not having to worry about the value question of drafting a linebacker at 12. Like, I have zero problem with drafting Sonny Styles at 12, but I don't know that I would feel super great about drafting any other linebacker at 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's the value that I think Styles is that much better. I like CJ Allen, and I like some of these other guys that are probably in range of that 20th pick. But my point being, like, outside of Styles, if you're trying to really improve the position, I think you're probably better going the free agent route, because you're going to need to go that way anyways. You're probably going to need to spend that level of kind of money on at least one player in free agency. Why not get the most bang for your buck and get a linebacker, and then save some value in the draft by drafting the kind of positions that you want to save money on in the long-term 5-year contract with the rookie deals?
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys trading back because I think everybody assumes that they're going to trade back from either 12 or 20. Maybe they do it both times. Is it okay to lose value on a trade in this year's draft? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they're going to handle everything. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it all. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, all you have to do is file by February 28th. So take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. The off-season doesn't exist for the everydayer club. Join the group chat to talk Cowboys year-round and get every episode of the show ad-free. Just head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or hit the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Landon, let's get to some more questions. And this is a really good one from Kevin. He wants to know, there's a common sentiment in this draft that the players between picks like 18 and 35 aren't all that different. Given that, would you be okay trading down and losing value, at least according to like the trade value charts? And how far down from 20 are you comfortable going?
This is a complicated conversation, but it goes, let's start with the first thing. You and I have advocated for this, but I do feel like it's smart for teams to create trade value charts every single season. I think it needs to be draft class based. And this is the exact scenario why, right? Because in this class where, the value is in that lower to middle part, and there isn't as much, top end talent, then I think that the trade value chart should reflect that, right? Scarcity is going to be part of the equation in this situation, right? And the fact is that the Cowboys aren't going to have a lot of folks that are necessarily looking to come up to the top end of the draft or even move up at all in the first round because of what we just talked about, the kind of lack of the dearth of talent, the top end, the fact that the talent sort of plateaus to a certain degree at the end of the first half to, out top of the third or whatever you want to label it as. So I think that's got to feed into your thought process in value. So the answer to the question outright, yes, I think it's okay to lose value because I think the value chart is a guide. It's not immutable. In fact, it should be adjustable based on a wide variety of things that are changing constantly. I think that there is also a opportunity cost that maybe is not factored in for all teams, that maybe with the Cowboys, where you have needs, like you have numbered needs, and getting an opportunity to draft just another body who could be a starter or borderline starter for your team, that has some extra value that you can, in your mind kind of add into the calculation if you want. So I do think that it's okay to take, to adjust your thought process, your grading, not your grading, but your value in these charts based on how the individual class is, the actual stock of people that are looking to trade, right? The actual volume of people that are potentially looking to trade. If you don't have a lot of people calling on the phone, and you're desperate to kind of get into that value area, yeah, you may take a little bit less because, just simple supply and demand economics. So I think it's okay to do it. I mean, as long as you understand that, this is a guideline, you should still use it as a guideline. And you don't just take an absolute bath on the trade numbers.
Well, I'm going to give you an example. I was actually doing a mock for FanSided on Tuesday where I had the Cowboys trading back from 20 to 30, and I had Denver coming up to draft Keldrick Falk. And usually that kind of trade back would require a second round pick or like a third and fourth round pick, right? But in this mock, I had the Cowboys just trading back for a third round pick. And I know that feels like a big drop going from 20 to 30 in most years, because it is. Like, usually if you're drafting at 20, you're hoping to get a top 15 player on your board, maybe a top 13 player. But I don't know if player 15 on your board compared to player 23, 25 is going to be all that different. Would I want the Cowboys to maybe get an additional fifth or sixth round pick? Of course. But I think at the end of the day, Landon, if I told you, hey, the Cowboys got pick, I think it's pick 90 and pick 30 for pick 20, I wouldn't hate it.
I wouldn't hate it. I mean, and it's understandable. It certainly is not the value you'd hope for. But again, this isn't the draft class that you'd hope for necessarily. So I do think that there is, like I said, an opportunity cost that should be calculated in there in these classes where the class is just not deep enough to support these kind of trades normally happening.
So to answer the question, how far back would you be willing to go? Given the way that this team handles contracts, I don't think I would want to get out of the first round.
No,
because
you want
I think
both of those first round contracts.
Because I think you want that fifth year option. Now, if you're going from like 20 to 33 or 34, I think you're going to need full value on those trades, right, to get out of the first round. But if you're dropping from like 20 to 27, I think it's okay to take a small loss on a trade because they need picks.
Yeah, and I think I think the question is kind of, is it okay to knowingly go into this situation that you're going to be paying less? I think that is okay. I don't think that you should just wave away all value, and that you still need to make sure that you're getting some kind of close to value. I just think it's okay to understand going in, hey, I'm taking 75 cents on the dollar in these trade negotiations because it's just the class and the way that the economics work.
I want to ask you a question that our guy Stretch actually asked me this morning. He wanted to know, do you think the Cowboys would be willing to do that trade back right now so they can kind of prepare for having another day 2 pick or whatever? Because it's an interesting thought. We've seen this in previous years where teams are making these, trades in March. I think it was Houston a couple of years ago, traded completely out of round 1 for 2 second-round picks. Would you be willing to do that trade now, or do you want to see what's on the board?
I don't think that there's anything that I don't think that anything that happens at 12 should be affecting in this particular case.
I think the idea is like, what if you trade away from 20 now and an awesome player fell to that spot? Do you regret not just hanging in there and waiting?
No, because you're picking at 12. if an awesome player is falling, then pick him at 12. I don't think so. I don't think that there's going to be that awesome player that is getting taken after 12 and before 20 that I have to take at 20. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't think of who that player would be. So in this particular case, and I think it is a case by case basis, right? Like I would be okay on the Cowboys side to do it. The question really becomes, would the other team be willing to do that? Would the other team be okay? Because they may not. I mean, first of all, who are they trading up for? And how do you know that 20 is going to be good enough to get them? And also, if you're trading up for someone specific, aren't you tipping your hand by trading this early up to 20 that, hey, I'm coming for Ty Simpson, and now someone's I
don't think it's a quarterback. I think it's either you're coming up for like an offensive tackle or a receiver, and you just know that you can't wait. And honestly, what we've seen in recent trades is, okay, let's say it's Denver moving from 30 to 20. Sometimes it's a lot harder for these teams to execute trades. Like, let's say they needed to get to 15 to get Mekhi Lemon. Okay, I'm making it up. It's going to be really hard for the team at 15 to want to trade all the way back to 30. But if they're trading from 15 to 20, much more palatable. And if you got a team like Denver that has a clear receiver need, maybe it's not the worst idea to go ahead and get that deal done now so you can start working on that next trade up to go get your receiver.
To answer your question, absolutely not. I have no problem with, I have no problem with doing the trade now. I think you can kind of insulate yourself a little bit, and especially if we're talking about 20, 12 may be a different story. but I think 20, like
20
just because who's valuable, I'm not necessarily afraid of missing out on anything, because if I was truly missing out, I would have gotten him at 12. Correct. And anything in between 12 and 20, it's all plateauing as far as I'm concerned.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys trading with the Steelers once again. I mean, that worked out pretty well the last time. Good. Could they do it now that Mike McCarthy is the head coach? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. And here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the entire experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which teams can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. And now, not only can you pick cash, you can also send you and your family to the NBA Finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Landon, we've got one more question here, and actually we've got a couple of people that asked it. They want to know, now that Mike McCarthy is installed as the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, could we see the Cowboys and the Steelers make another trade? Are there a couple guys in the roster that could maybe make the jump from Dallas to Pittsburgh?
Maybe. I think the first guys that kind of come to mind are the guys that we've talked about as potential trade bait, and it's the backup offensive linemen. You've got them on cost controlled contracts as they're restricted free agents. We haven't assigned tags to those yet, but they are exclusive rights or regular restricted free agents, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So yep. They will get tagged at some point, and that kind of, I think, can either be a salary for that player, or it could be the start of a negotiation for another team, right? Like if you give them a second round tender, that doesn't mean that they have to give you a second rounder, but that kind of gives you an idea of like where they're going to be paid, and then what appropriate compensation. Usually less, obviously. I mean, we would be talking about like a fourth round or a third round potentially for a guy like DJ Bass or
Pittsburgh's got some picks in that range, so like it's realistic. I just wonder if it's going to be a lot of not trades, but just like a lot of ex-Cowboy players like CJ Goodwin and Malik Davis and players like that making the switch over to that.
Tolbert and Mingo, right? Are both
really Tolbert. Like I think McCarthy likes Tolbert a lot. That one makes a ton of sense.
I wouldn't be shocked at all if Tolbert ended up there. So yeah, if he doesn't re-sign with the Cowboys, which I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. I also wouldn't be surprised if he did, just because Dak likes him and maybe he'll take a lesser deal. But
the problem with Tolbert is he was a healthy scratch for a lot of games down the stretch, and I got to believe if Pickens comes back, he's looking at the depth chart with Flournoy and Turpin and thinking, do I really want to sign up to be the fifth or sixth receiver once again?
And maybe he thinks he can go to Pittsburgh and get an opportunity to be that third receiver or find a way to start, right? So maybe that's what he's looking at. So yeah, I would say that all those guys kind of fall under that category for sure. I wouldn't be shocked if Malik Davis ends up there with him. I think that the free agent market of Cowboys that are leaving, I think will probably be looked at for sure. I can't imagine a ton of other trade, opportunities necessarily.
It's shocking how much the rosters have just changed in a year. And like a lot of the guys that McCarthy had a lot of success with, they're just locked up to long-term deals. Like Jake Ferguson just signed a new deal, and Pittsburgh has tight ends. You're not trading Dak. You're not trading CeeDee Lamb. Terrence Steele is a redundant for them at right tackle because they have Troy Fautanu. Like it just doesn't line up particularly well. I understand the thought and the question. I think the only realistic guy is someone like TJ Bass because the Steelers do have a need at left guard. If Isaac Seumalo leaves and maybe they feel like Bass is a better fit in their offense, and if they can get him for a fifth round pick, maybe they do it.
Yeah. And yeah, who knows what the value is there, but like the Cowboys looking for picks, at this point, maybe it's a pick swap too. Just, I wouldn't be shocked if they got a good offer for TJ Bass and flipped him or Hoffman. I think at that point,
I was going to say,
they liked Hoffman as a guard.
I have a hard time believing that the Cowboys are going to bring back both Hoffman and Bass on the second round tender, because that's like 5.8 million. And I don't know, I think 11 million for 2 backup offensive linemen is a little expensive considering you already had the most expensive offense in the league. So if Pittsburgh were to offer like a 6th round pick for Hoffman, would you do it?
That seems a little light, but I guess so. I mean, I think I probably would try to shoot for a little bit more, or maybe like
maybe you get a 5th
equivalent.
and they get a 6th or something like that.
Yeah. Or like I said, like I wouldn't mind if it was like a pick swap, equivalent for something a little bit higher. But yeah, like I think I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up getting an offer and just for the sake of kind of collecting picks, decided to go ahead and accept that, just because there's not a lot of room at the end at this point.
No, and it's just, this is the most expensive offense in the league. You can't keep everybody, and you've got to draft and develop these guys. And I think you're going to have to choose between Hoffman and Bass. I think Bass is the better player. I think he's a better fit in the scheme. Wouldn't be surprised if Hoffman is the guy that ultimately gets moved. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast to get all of the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.